You can hear the terror in their voice as they describe what's happening to them as they are barricaded in that conference room. Please listen carefully, because the staffer is whispering into a phone as he hides from the rioters that are outside the door.
Texting Mike that they're within our hallway. We need Capitol Police, I think, coming to the hallway. They're pounding on doors trying to find her. Yeah.
You can hear the pounding in the background as that staffer is speaking. One of those staffers explained later that they could hear the mob going through her offices, breaking down the door and yelling, "Where are you, Nancy?"
House Manager Stacey Plaskett from earlier.
An announcement. We've been advised by Facebook that Disney Enterprises Inc. has filed a complaint against this production because I'm using some of their copyrighted material. Apparently, this reporter would have to suggest, or that suggests that there's something that Disney has created here that they are objecting that I rebroadcast. So everything that we're watching from the impeachment trial has to be put in question as to what is and what is not a Disney production, or there's something belonging to Disney here. Okay, just for an advisement, an FYI for everyone watching and those who will watch, and anyway, any fact checkers or anyone checking copyright claims at Facebook or YouTube or anything, Disney Enterprises Inc. has requested that this broadcast be blocked worldwide due to some type of copyright infringement. I'm just showing you. First of all, I'm not a Disney character. I may appear to some as a bear or a thing. I remember seeing a bear and it may look like me, but I am not a Disney character. And everything else is coming from C-SPAN. C-SPAN is emitting what the government, the public stream of public information. So I'm just, and they have granted me permission, and as a generic form, because no permission is required for rebroadcasting this stream. So again, this is an issue that if something does belong here to Disney, what is it? Is it part of the film? Is it some production that was made? Some type of performance here? We don't know yet. But I'm just telling you what Facebook has informed us, either automatically or manually or semi-automatic or whatnot. We just don't know. We don't know what Facebook does. Simply, I'm just reporting it just in case that anybody wonders or something in the future is alleged. We are just simply rebroadcast according to the instructions on the C-SPAN website. Anyone can go and see on copyright and limitations and whatnot, use policy. We have the right to rebroadcast this, and that's what we're doing, simply. So if there's some type of production here by Disney, then I think people would like to know that. I would like to know what part of it exactly is a Disney production or something from Disney Enterprises for them to insist on a blockage. Other than that, we had a blockage yesterday. Some dung something or dong something other, and it was some Arabic writing next to the name. I mean, some Arab has some claim here to some copyrighted material that may be also. How can we deny it or disprove it? We have no. I would like to know how is it in an Arab. A person on Facebook with an Arabic script next to the name may have some copyrighted material here and these images. So again, we are just informing the audience, and for Facebook and YouTube to, I don't know, either we have Arabs that have created something here for the American population to see, and someone's claiming a copyright on that, or Disney also maybe have created something here that they are exercising a copyright claim on. We don't know. I can only tell you what Facebook informed me, and so Facebook is the one who's giving me this information. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out there so people can see or know about objections that have been raised from our rebroadcasting of this public information. This is public thing. We're being transparent, and the government should be transparent, and just like the elections should be transparent, so that there's no question. So I'm letting everyone know what I have been informed. These are this is the information we have from what the veracity of the claims are. I would only have to. I doubt it, because these are things offered by the through C-SPAN. So that is what it is. Again, in this society of claims here and there, we are having our suffering it as well ourselves for simply providing a public service, extending the public service of C-SPAN, which we have the right of free speech, we have the right to rebroadcast public information. That's what we're doing. So I don't know what's up with Disney, don't know what's up with Dong, whatever his name is, with the Arabic lettering, and I don't know what Facebook is doing. Just anyone who wants to claim something, they're just letting it go like that. So, and I guess it's in the spirit of the holiday. Any claims, anybody wants to raise up a claim and make an accusation, we got to go with that, right? So that's basically the tone of what's happening here. So let's go to the proceedings. It may be or may not be a Disney production. Let us see.
My colleagues about the harrowing events that happened here at the Capitol on January 6th and saw that very disturbing video. I'd now like to turn your attention to what was happening on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue at the White House. And the truth is, the facts are that on January 6th, Donald Trump did not once condemn this attack. He did not once condemn the attackers. In fact, on January 6th, the only person he condemned was his own vice president, Mike Pence, who was hiding in this building with his family in fear for his life. In the first crucial hours of this violent attack, he did nothing to stop it, nothing to help us. By all accounts, from the people that were around him, he was delighted. And here's the last thing Donald Trump said that day. And you might remember this from my motions presentation earlier in the week. At 6 p.m. on January 6th, after all the destruction that you just saw, the Capitol Police and the National Guard fighting to secure this building, here's what Donald Trump tweeted. "These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace.
That's what I've been saying.
Remember
4 years,
this
they
day
call
forever."
Trump supporters idiots.
He got what he incited,
Idiots.
and according to Donald Trump, we got what we deserved.
Anything Trump, they didn't have anything
Donald
to do with
Trump's incitement of this
lack
insurrection,
of election
including his
transparency,
dereliction of his
and then
duty as commander-in-chief to defend the Capitol and the people in it, his complete
fearing that
refusal
also their country, they're
to condemn the
so
attack
close.
while it was going
They've been
on,
called idiots for 4
and his
years.
continued incitement of the violence during the attack
You guys do
require
nothing.
impeachment.
Just accept what we say.
Now let's turn to then President Trump's conduct that day.
Not good
I want to start at the beginning when he addressed his
ignoring,
thousands of
ignoring. I don't
great
want you to
patriots,
change.
as he called them that morning.
ignoring.
Around noon, Donald Trump began speaking at his rally just down Pennsylvania Avenue. Even before Donald Trump finished speaking, his supporters began to walk down toward the Capitol, and they were already starting to chant, "Stop the steal, storm the Capitol, invade the Capitol, fight for Trump." And by 12:53 p.m., they had violently forced their way through the barricades here at the Capitol. Now, about 1 o'clock that day, with this chaos just starting, Speaker Pelosi, as the Constitution requires, formally commenced the process by which this chamber certifies the election results. Within 10 minutes, at 1:11 p.m., as if almost on cue, Donald Trump concluded his speech with his final reminder to the thousands gathered there that it was time to go to the Capitol. Let's watch.
And we're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give, but we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I want to thank you all.
Right there.
God bless you,
He's telling
and
to
God
give them
bless
boldness.
America. Thank you all
At
for
this
being here.
moment,
This is
there already-
incredible. Thank you very
There's
much.
some bold ones already doing bold things. Does he know anything going on? He doesn't know what's going on.
Now, you've seen what happened when these supporters, following his orders, arrived here at the Capitol. But I want to look at what happened next. Now, you'll recall during the speech, President Trump said, "We're going to the Capitol," sort of suggesting that he was going to go with this crowd. Of course, that was not true. But let's hear what he said.
Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down.
So he'll be there with
We're going
him.
to walk
So
down
wherever you find a
anyone
camera
you
shot,
want, but I
maybe
think
ask
right
Disney,
here we're going to walk
of
down
President
to
Trump
the
there
Capitol.
with them, then you can see what exactly he is talking about.
This, of course, was not true. He did not go with him to the Capitol. He left and went back to the White House. And while he was en route to the White House, violence really began to grow here at the Capitol. And within minutes of Donald Trump's speech ending, there were significant reports of escalating violence that began to surface. Buildings around the Capitol were starting to be evacuated. And by 1:15, an explosive device had been found at the DNC. A pipe bomb had been found at the RNC about 15 minutes earlier. The House Sergeant at Arms had called for immediate assistance. At 1:34 p.m., the mayor of Washington, D.C. called for additional National Guard troops. I won't go through all of the details of the violence that unfolded here. You just saw that. But as we walk through what our commander-in-chief did that day, I want to be very clear about exactly what was happening here at the same time. For 40 minutes, while buildings were being cleared, pipe bombs were being found, his supporters were literally breaching the perimeter of the Capitol, and overwhelming law enforcement, and you saw the violence that was occurring. We heard nothing from the President of the United States. We didn't hear anything from Donald Trump until 1:49 p.m., when while all of this is unfolding, President Trump sent out a tweet. This was the first thing he did when he learned the United States Capitol, with all the members of Congress, his own vice president, was under violent attack. And what was that tweet? Nearly an hour after the rioters breached the Capitol perimeter, at 1:49, Donald Trump released a propaganda reel of his Save America speech that he'd given an hour before. I want to be clear. The events I just described the rioters are breaching the Capitol, attacking law enforcement. The violence is being broadcast all over the television for the whole world to see, including the President of the United States. And I want to show you, this is what is happening right before Donald Trump sends that video out again, and as he does it.
Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Even if President Trump claims he didn't know the extent of the violence that would follow his speech, it was now happening in plain view, broadcast on television. His supporters were attacking law enforcement. The mayor and the police chief were calling for help. Members of Congress and the vice president were inside, scared for their lives. And he doesn't send help, doesn't try to stop it, doesn't even acknowledge the attack. Instead, our commander-in-chief tweeted the video of the speech that he'd given before that included language like, "Our country has had enough, we will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. You have to be strong." Those around Donald Trump, as was later reported, were disgusted. His close aides, his advisors, those working for him, former officials, even his family were begging him to do something. Kellyanne Conway, the president's close advisor, called to, quote, add her name to the chorus of aides urging Donald Trump to take action. Ivanka Trump, the president's own daughter, went to the Oval Office as soon as the rioting escalated and was, as confirmed by Senator Graham, quote, trying to get Trump to speak out, to tell everyone to leave, end quote. Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy called Jared Kushner, pleading with him to persuade Trump to issue a statement or to do something.
They wanted
And
Trump to
Kushner,
go
too,
there in person.
went down to the White House after that call.
And then what would have happened?
And it
You
wasn't
see,
just the people at the White House.
He's coming to
Members
lead
of Congress from
his cavalry to take over the country. This is what they would have said. It's like ridiculous. Nothing he could have done will help this case. Nothing.
To Donald Trump. These members who had, quote, been loyal Trump supporters and were even willing to vote against the Electoral College results were now scared for their lives. Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy repeatedly even got into a screaming match as the attack was underway, demanding that Trump do something, issue a statement denouncing the mob. I imagine many of you sitting here today picked up your phone and tried to reach somebody at the White House to ask for help. This wasn't partisan politics. These were Americans from all sides trying to force our commander-in-chief to protect and defend our country. He was required to do that. Now, the extent of how many people tried to reach the president to get him to act is not known. But what is clear, what we know without any doubt, is that from the very beginning, the people around Donald Trump lobbied him to take command. What's also clear is what Donald Trump, our commander-in-chief, did in those initial hours to protect us. Nothing. Not a thing. He knew it was happening. The attack was on TV. We all know that President Trump had the power to stop these attacks. He was our commander-in-chief. He had the power to assess the security situation, send backup, send help. He also had incited this violent attack. They were listening to him. He could have commanded them to leave. But he didn't. The first critical hour and a half of this bloody attack, Donald Trump tweeted his rally speech and did nothing else. And we know why. We know his state of mind that prompted his utter, complete refusal to defend us. was reported by those around him. The president, as reported by sources, at the time was delighted. As he watched the violence unfold on television, President Trump was reportedly, and I quote, borderline enthusiastic because it meant the certification was being derailed, end quote. Senator Ben Sasse relayed a conversation with senior White House officials that President Trump was, quote, walking around the White House, confused about why other people on his team weren't as excited as he was, end quote. Trump's reaction to this attack reportedly genuinely freaked people out. I understand why. We just suffered a very serious attack on our country. And we saw it, and the people around him knew it. But when Donald Trump saw it, he was delighted. Now, what President Trump did next confirms why he was so delighted, why he wanted this. Because it shows that his singular focus that day, the day we were attacked, was not protecting us, was not protecting you, was not protecting the Capitol. It was stopping the certification of the election results. The evidence is clear. Shortly after 2 p.m., as the siege was fully underway, then President Trump made a call. This is the first call that we are aware he made to anyone inside the Capitol during the attack. Didn't call the vice president to ask how he could help defend the Capitol. Didn't call the next two in line to the succession of the presidency to check on their safety or well-being. Instead, he attempted to call Senator Tuberville. He dialed Senator Lee by accident. As Senator Lee describes it, he had just ended a prayer with his colleagues here in the Senate chamber, and the phone rang. It was Donald Trump. And how Senator Lee explains it is that the phone call goes something like this. Hey, Tommy, Trump asks, and Senator Lee says, this isn't Tommy, and he hands the phone to Senator Tuberville. Senator Lee then confirmed that he stood by as Senator Tuberville and President Trump spoke on the phone. And on that call, Donald Trump reportedly asked Senator Tuberville to make additional objections to the certification process. That's why he called. Now, let's be clear, at roughly 2 p.m., when Donald Trump was walking around the White House, watching the TV delighted, and spent 5 to 10 minutes talking to Senator Tuberville, urging him to delay the election results, this is what was happening in the Capitol.
We'll pause.
Protesters are in the building.
Thank you.
Acting on their own reconnaissance.
You saw Senator Langford stop speaking and leave the floor quickly in that clip because the insurgents had broken through the barricades and had entered the building. And as these armed insurrectionists banged on the doors, members of Congress were told to put on their gas masks, to put bags over their heads for safety and prepare to evacuate. And Donald Trump was calling to ask a senator to delay the certification process.
This is just a travesty. Travesty against humanity.
Let that sink in.
He's a human being.
Donald Trump didn't get to finish that call. It was cut off because the senators had to move to another location for your security. And thank God they did. Because as the call was occurring, the rioters got closer to the Senate chambers. And as we all know now, but for the heroism of Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman and other law enforcement officers who took them in a different direction to the police line, they very likely would have gotten here. Think about that. Armed insurrectionists, guns, weapons, zip ties, brass knuckles, they were coming for us. They were inside the United States Capitol, trying to stop the certification process. The police were outnumbered, and but for the grace of God, they would have gotten us, all of us. And our commander-in-chief makes a call about an hour after the siege
idiots.
began, not
Okay,
to
take that with
preserve,
two
protect, and defend you and our country and the Capitol, but to
Transparent
join
election.
forces with the mob and pressure a senator to stop certification. We just can't get numb to this kind of behavior. There can be no doubt as to the
Yes,
purpose
he's
of
being
Donald
so
Trump's call,
dishonest. You see him,
that he was
he's
not calling
smart
to
and
assess
stuff.
the security threats
being
or to
sincere,
check on the well-being of you
He's not gonna
or
win
anyone
no
else.
award for acting sucks.
Indeed, later on that evening,
can't
while
be the
all of the
Disney
destruction and damage still continued, dozens of officers were being treated for serious injuries. Deaths were confirmed. About 7 p.m., the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, made a call.
Maybe one of those
And just in case you don't think there was some coordination, he also called Senator Lee's phone trying to reach Senator Tuberville. We don't have to guess as to what Rudy Giuliani said in that voicemail because we have it recorded. So let's listen to what the president's personal lawyer said on the night of this attack.
Senator Tuberville, or I should say Coach Tuberville, this is Rudy Giuliani, President's lawyer. I'm calling you because I want to discuss with you how they're trying to rush this hearing and how we need you, our Republican friends, to try to just slow it down.
This was the singular focus of Donald Trump during this bloody, violent attack on the Capitol, stopping the certification. Look, as I mentioned, I was a trial lawyer for 16 years. Sometimes you have to ask a jury to use reasonable inferences to piece together a defendant's state of mind. We don't have to do this here. While our country was violently attacked by an armed mob, President Trump not only refused to stop the attack or even address the attack at all, he made clear his focus was the same goal of the attackers he had incited: to stop the certification process and prevent the peaceful transition of power. The only action we know that he took an hour into this attack was to call Senator Tuberville to ask him to delay the certification. This is as clear evidence as I have ever seen of what Donald Trump really cared about that day. Now look, the certification process, as we all know, includes debate and objections. Some of us disagreed, but we came here on January 6th to formally administer the certification process pursuant to our constitutional duties. And at the end of it, Congress certified the results to ensure that we continue to be a country with leaders who are elected by the people for the people. Donald Trump's objection to the certification are not on trial. But what is on trial is while we were under armed attack and being evacuated, while our law enforcement officers were fighting for their lives, our commander-in-chief was calling not to determine how to best secure the building and the people in it, but to continue to pressure senators to stop the certification process and the peaceful transfer of power, just as he incited the mob to do earlier in the day. This was a breathtaking dereliction of his duty and of his violation of his oath as our commander-in-chief. Senators, before I hand this over to Manager Castro to walk through the rest of the day, please let me make one final point. These attackers stood right where you are. They went on that rostrum. They rifled through your desks and they desecrated this place. And literally, the president sat delighted, doing nothing to help us, calling one of you to pressure you to stop the certification. It can't be that the commander-in-chief can incite a lawless, bloody insurrection and then utterly fail in his duty as commander-in-chief to defend us from the attack, to defend our law enforcement officers from that attack, and just get away with it. Donald Trump abdicated his duty to us all. We have to make this right, and you can make it right.
My fellow manager, David Cicilline, showed you what President Trump did and did not do in those first critical hours of the attack. He sent a tweet at 1:49 p.m. where he reposted a video of the speech that incited the attack. And he called a senator to ask him to delay the certification as the senator was being evacuated for his own safety. We left off around 2:15 p.m. At this point, insurgents were inside the Senate and the House, and the Senate had been evacuated for everyone's safety. And as you saw, Vice President Mike Pence and his family even had to be evacuated for their safety. Now, you'll recall, Donald Trump had made Vice President Pence a target. He attacked the Vice President at the rallies, in speeches, and on Twitter. And during President Trump's speech that morning of the attack, he ramped it up again after privately pressuring Mike Pence in front of thousands in the crowd. He called Mike Pence out 11 times, including saying, quote, "Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of your country. And if you're not, I'm going to be disappointed in you. I will tell you right now." And this was the crowd's response to Donald Trump's days of relentless attacks on his own vice president. By 2:15 p.m., the crowd was chanting in unison, "Hang Mike Pence," outside the very building he'd been evacuated from with his family. Now, even if President Trump didn't know that his inflammatory remarks about his vice president would result in chants of "Hang Mike Pence," by 2:15 p.m., he surely knew. The attack was all over television. They were doing this out in the open. This was a vice president whose life, whose family's life, was being threatened by people whom the president had summoned to the Capitol. And what did President Trump do in response? Did he stop? Did he tell his base, "No, don't attack my vice president"? Even when President Trump knew what his words were causing, he didn't do any of those things to stop the crowd. In fact, he did the opposite. He fueled the fire. At 2:24 p.m., he tweeted, quote, "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. USA demands the truth." Over an hour and a half into the attack, and this is what he tweeted. And he still, even at this point, did not acknowledge the attack on the Capitol, let alone condemn it. Instead, he further incites the mob against his own vice president, whose life was being threatened. Well, some of you may say, well, who was paying attention anyway? Well, that mob was paying attention.
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. U.S. demands the truth.
Mike Pence is a bitch! Mike Pence is a bitch!
Can I speak to Pelosi? Yeah, we're coming, bitch! Oh, Mike Pence, we're coming for you too, fucking traitor!
The insurgents amplified President Trump's tweet attacking the vice president with a bullhorn. They were paying attention, and they also followed instructions. In fact, the insurgents were at one point, as you saw, 60 feet away from the vice president and the vice president's family. Some of these insurgents were heard saying, quote, that they hope to find Vice President Mike Pence and execute him by hanging him from a Capitol Hill tree as a traitor. And then they erected a gallows with a noose. This is what Donald Trump incited. Please take a close look at that picture. It harkens back to our nation's worst history of lynching. A president's words have the power to move people to action. These were the results. And why did the president incite such rage against the vice president? He was fulfilling his constitutional duty, as we all were that day. Vice presidents in this country have been carrying out this constitutional duty, overseeing the certification of the election results without incident, without contest, without a word, for the entirety of our nation. It's part of our peaceful transition of power in the United States. And the vice president said he reviewed the Constitution and he could not block certification as President Trump wanted him and was pressuring him to do. He told the president in a letter that morning, a few hours before President Trump's tweet, quote, I will approach this moment with a sense of duty and an open mind, setting politics and personal interests aside, and do my part to faithfully discharge my duties, our duties, under the Constitution. I also pray that we will do so with humility and faith. And the president's response to that statement was to attack Mike Pence while he was with his family under the threat of a violent mob. The vice president was following his faith, his duty, and his oath to our nation. And the vice president and I don't agree on too much in politics, but he's a man who upholds his oath, his faith, his duty, and most of all, upholds the Constitution. And Mike Pence is not a traitor to this country. He's a patriot. And he and his family, who was with him that day, didn't deserve this. Didn't deserve a president unleashing a mob on them, especially because he was just doing his job. As this was unfolding and the crowd grew more violent, the president, of course, was not alone at the White House. And the people closest to him, his family and advisors who saw this unfolding in real time, begged him, implored him to stop the attack. An aide to Mark Meadows, the president's chief of staff, urged his boss to go see the president, saying, quote, they are going to kill people. They're going to kill people. That's what those around President Trump feared. And still, nothing. It wasn't until 2:38 p.m., nearly 2 hours after the start of the siege, that Donald Trump even acknowledged the attack. And when he finally did acknowledge the attack, here's what he said. On the right, you'll see what had been happening prior to that tweet and as he sent the tweet. And on the left, you'll see exactly what he tweeted.
I'm going to stop you there for just one moment because we do have some breaking news. We want to bring in congressional correspondent Chad Pergram as this is just all developing right now. Chad, I understand the Capitol is now on lockdown.
They're definitely fired up. The chant, by the way, I heard the most today was "Fight for Trump," and that's clearly what many of them feel they're doing here.
So sad, but it's almost comical. They'll sing and trying to sing.
That's what our president saw unfolding in real time, broadcast all over television. And this is what he tweeted at 2:38 p.m. Quote, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They're truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." And much has been made of the fact that in this tweet, he says, "Stay peaceful." Senators, stay peaceful? Think about that for a second. These folks were not peaceful. They were breaking windows, pushing through law enforcement officers, waving the flag as they invaded this Capitol building. This was a violent, armed attack. Stay peaceful? How about stop the attack? Stop the violence. Stay peaceful? How about you say, immediately leave? Stop. And he said, please support our law enforcement.
Stop.
How about he actually support our law enforcement by telling these insurgents to leave the Capitol immediately, which he never did.
Do you think so? I don't think so.
He didn't. Because the truth is, he didn't want it to stop. He wanted them to stay and to stop the certification. And his failure had grave and deadly consequences. By 2:45 p.m., the warnings were tragically proven correct. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an officer as she tried to break through a glass door to reach the Speaker's lobby. At this point, the pleas to Donald Trump, publicly and privately, grew even more desperate.
Perfectly honest. I mean, what else are they going to do? What else can they do? The Democrats here. They need what has traditionally been called a scapegoat. They do. They need someone to blame. They can't take blame themselves for 4 years of antagonizing Republicans and Trump supporters. They cannot come out and be transparent about these past elections, obviously. I'm only saying what's been clear. They can't just come out and be more transparent and say, you know, let's sit down, as I suggested in a prior video that was it YouTube or Facebook? One of them took down YouTube, I believe. They took down my video where I just said, listen, why don't you just come, sit down at the table, let's talk. They took that down. And so again, with all of this, and then everything, all the media blocking and cutting people, turning off channels or disconnecting them from the social media outlets and whatnot. I mean, what do you think people will do? What does Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all that? How can they control what's going on at the Capitol or what could go on in the future? You know, because the bottom line is this: if you keep antagonizing people, American people, especially after they voted their hearts out, and then you guys don't even want to come and sit down at the table about this election, you know, then you look like you're covering up something. I'm not saying something happened. I'm just saying it has an appearance that you have something to hide. Just simply, let's put everything on the table. The only thing you want to put on the table is Trump again, as if he was a pot roast. That's all you've been doing, and you continue to do this, of what you've been doing for the last 4 years. Continue to do it. So it's like I say, you know, I hope to be wrong. I want to be wrong. I really do. I want to be wrong. I really do. I've been looking to be wrong for a long time. You don't understand. But this thing here is not going to end well. And if I'm hoping for Trump, I hope they do throw the book at him. Throw the book at him. You know, but I also understand that it's not going to go well for the country. Trump is not, you know, he's lived his life, man. You know, he's lived a good life. My. This is not about Trump. This is how far exceeded Trump at this point. But the Dems keep playing a game. The game is not paying attention. Not paying attention to a good amount of people. It's a big amount of people here, half the country. Half the country is not going to remain silent. This was nothing. This just opened the door. And the Democrats have to keep denying. You have no other choice. You have to keep denying, as you say, what never happened. And if it never happened, keep denying it is not the way to go. You need to sit down and let's be transparent. Let's lay everything out and let's work through it. You guys aren't doing the right thing. Yeah, half the nation is misguided. Half the country is misguided. You're not addressing anything about that. So I disagree with this whole thing altogether. Not just the impeachment issue. Impeachment issue is just part of the causational factors to these images that we're seeing and the loss of life. And the Democrats don't want to step up to take any responsibility. No. They want to blame it all on Trump. Like I said.
Thank you for putting in danger all of our lives and the lives of our families. How about instead of thank you, Donald Trump on that day acted like our commander-in-chief and stopped this as only he could and told those people to leave. And here's what former Governor Chris Christie, his very good friend, said after that tweet.
Pretty simple. The president caused this protest to occur. He's the only one who can make it stop. What the president said is not good enough. The president has to come out and tell his supporters to leave the Capitol grounds and to allow the Congress to do their business peacefully. And anything short of that is an abrogation of his responsibility.
He's right. Chris Christie is right. We know how Donald Trump acts on Twitter and otherwise when he has a message to convey. In fact, I asked you to remember those tweets earlier this morning when he yelled on Twitter, "Stop the count."
Wasn't he banned by then?
When he wanted to incite his supporters to show up on January 6th, President Trump tweeted 16 times between midnight on January 5th and his noon rally speech the next day.
All right, so he still wasn't
16
banned.
times to get them to do something he wanted. And his message in those 16 times was clear. Fight. Stay strong. Be strong. But when the violence started, he never once said the one thing everyone around him was begging him to say. Stop the attack.
You still would have
He refused to
starting
stop it.
the attack. Without a doubt.
And as Governor Christie and Representative Kinzinger and others made clear, only Donald Trump could have stopped that attack.
You know, a guy that knows how to tweet very aggressively on Twitter puts out one of the weakest statements and one of the saddest days in American history because his ego won't let him, admit defeat.
He was not just our commander-in-chief. He had incited the attack. His commands. And we saw when they read aloud this tweet, attacking the vice president. And they confirmed this during the attack, too.
There's a fucking million of us out there, and we are listening to Trump, your boss.
Senators, ask yourself this. How easy would it have been for the president to give a simple command,
It's just they are using
a simple instruction,
They're
just telling them,
disappointed, like I
stop,
said, and they're acting on their
leave.
own. Yeah, and then
This was a dereliction of duty, plain and simple. And it would have been for any president who had done that. And that brings me to my next point. You heard from my colleagues that when planning this attack, the insurgents predicted that Donald Trump would command the National Guard to help them. And there's a lot that we don't know yet about what happened that day. But here's what we do know. Donald Trump did not send help to these officers who were badly outnumbered, overwhelmed, and being beaten down. 2 hours into the insurrection, by 3 p.m., President Trump had not deployed the National Guard or any other law enforcement to help, despite multiple pleas to do so. President Donald Trump was at the time our Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America.
He wasn't your president.
He took a solemn oath to preserve, protect, and defend this country. And he failed to uphold that oath. In fact, there's no indication that President Trump ever made a call to have the Guard deployed or had anything to do with the Guard being deployed when it ultimately was. And shortly after 3:04 p.m., the acting defense secretary announced that the Guard had been activated and listed the people he spoke with prior to this activation, including Vice President Mike Pence, Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Senator Schumer, and Representative Hoyer. But that list did not include the president. This omission of his name was reportedly not accidental. According to reports, quote, Trump initially rebuffed requests to mobilize the National Guard and required interference by other officials, including his own White House counsel. And later, quote, as a mob of Trump supporters breached police barricades and seized the Capitol, Trump reportedly was, quote, disengaged in discussions with Pentagon leaders about deploying the National Guard to aid the overwhelmed U.S. Capitol Police. President Trump was reportedly, and I quote, completely, totally out of it. He made no attempt to reach the National Guard, and it was Vice President Pence, still under the threat for his life, who reportedly spoke to the Guard. President Trump's conduct confirms this too. At no point on January 6th did Donald Trump even reference the National Guard. The only thing that we heard connecting the president to the Guard was from his press secretary, who tweeted about the Guard being deployed at the president's direction over half an hour later at 3:36 p.m. And we have seen what Donald Trump does when he tries to take credit for something. And yet, even when the National Guard was finally deployed, he didn't even acknowledge it. In fact, he didn't say a word about the National Guard the entire day. Think about that. The bloodiest attack we've seen on our Capitol since 1812, and our president couldn't be bothered to even mention that help was on its way. These insurgents had been attacking our government for over 4 hours by that point. And we may have been the target, but it was the brave men and women who protect our capital who were out there combating thousands of armed insurgents in a fight for their lives. And that's who Donald Trump left entirely unprotected. And this is hard to watch, but I think it's important we understand what the Capitol Police were facing, how severely they were outnumbered, while our Commander-in-Chief, whose job it was to protect and defend them, was just watching, doing nothing for hours, refusing to send help. If he wanted to protect these officers, if he cared about their safety, as he tweeted about, he would have told his supporters to leave. He would have sent help right away. And one brave officer was killed. Others took their lives after the attack. More than 140 police officers were injured, including cracked ribs, smashed spinal discs. One officer will lose an eye. Another was stabbed with a metal fence stake. They were completely and violently overwhelmed by a mob and needed help. And our Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, refused to send it. Senators, you've seen all the evidence so far, and this is clear. On January 6th, President Trump left everyone in this Capitol for dead. For the next hour, after President Trump's 3 p.m. tweet, he still did nothing. Not until 4:17 p.m., over 3.5 hours after the violence started, did our president send a message finally asking the insurgents to go home. On the right, you'll see what happened that day in the hours leading up to his pre-recorded video. On the left, you'll see his message. Let's watch.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace.
This is the first time our Commander-in-Chief spoke publicly at all since the attack began, over the 3.5 hours after it started. And these are the entirety of the words the President spoke out loud to the American people or to the attackers that entire day. Nowhere in that video, not once, did he say, "I condemn this insurrection. I condemn what you did today." Nowhere did he say, "I'm sending help immediately. Stop this." Here's what he said instead. "I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen. Even after all the things we witnessed, even after all of that carnage, he goes out and tells the same big lie. The same big lie that enraged and incited the attack. He repeated this while the attack was ongoing and while we were still under threat. And here's what else he said. Go home in peace. We love you. You're very special. Senators, you were here. You saw this with your own eyes. You faced that danger. And when President Trump had an opportunity to confront them as the leader of us all, as our commander-in-chief, what did he tell them? We love you. You're very special. This was not a condemnation. This was a message of consolation, of support, of praise. And if there's any doubt that his supporters, these insurgents, took this as a message of support and praise, watch for yourselves.
Donald Trump asked everybody to go home. He just put out a tweet. It's a minute long. He asked everybody to go home.
Why do you think so?
Because, dude, we won the fucking day. We fucking won.
How did we win?
Well, we won by sending a message to the senators and the congressmen.
Yeah,
we won by sending a message to Pence, okay? That if they don't do as their oath to do, if they don't uphold the Constitution, then we will remove them from office one way or another.
I suspect you recognize that man. You'll hear him say that we won the day. Who won the day? We know that at least 5 people lost their lives that day. The House and the Senate were in life-threatening danger, and so was the Vice President. And think of everyone else here as well. Who won on January 6th? That's not a win for America, but it is a win for Donald Trump unless we hold him accountable. Now, a little over an hour after that video, the brave members of law enforcement secured the Capitol, and we as a Congress got ready to continue certifying the results of our free and fair election. A half hour after that, President Trump issued another tweet in case there was any doubt as to whether he was happy with the people who did this, as to whether he had incited this. He commemorated what happened on January 6th. At 6:01 p.m. on January 6th, he tweeted, quote, "These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who've been badly and unfairly treated for so long," ending with, "Remember this day forever." My colleague, Manager Cicilline, started with this tweet because this tweet shows exactly how Donald Trump felt about what happened on January 6th. These are the things that happened. He's saying this was foreseeable. He's saying, I told you this was going to happen if you certified the election for anyone else, and you got what you deserved for trying to take my power away. Great patriots, go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. He's saying to them, you did good. He's not regretful. He's not grieving. He's not sad. He's not angry about the attack. He's celebrating it. He's commemorating it. This is the entirety of what President Trump said to the public once the attack began. 5 tweets and a pre-recorded video. On the day of the most bloody insurrection we've faced in generations, our commander-in-chief, who's known for sending 108 tweets in a normal day, sent 5 tweets and a pre-recorded video. That is the entirety of President Trump's public statements from when the attack began until he went to bed on January 6th. That's all he did, despite all the people we know who begged him to preserve, protect, and defend. That was our commander-in-chief's response. He began the day with, quote, "Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore." And that's what this is all about. And he ended the attack letting us know that we got what he forewarned that morning. We will, of course, each of us, remember that day forever. but not in the way that President Trump intended. Not because of the actions of these vice